How's it going, YouTube? Coming today with another video, and today, guys, what I bring to you is my striker theory for November 2022. Now, I know that a lot of you have asked for this video, and this deck is so dynamic, and there's so many different ways you can play it, so I really had to take a lot of time to really consider a lot of options for the deck, especially for going first. I don't really feel like the deck should be going second right now, but I included a list for going second, and we'll talk about a lot of the theory behind going first or second in this format, and a lot of the different options that you can have. I really do like the sideboard that I have for this deck right now, and we'll talk about a lot of those options as well. The deck doesn't really have a bad matchup against Sprite or Fluandereeze, but it does have an abysmal matchup against Ishizu Tear. So there is a lot of different things that we have to main deck to make sure that we don't lose to Ishizu Tear. But we'll talk about a lot of that and more in the video. So I do hope that you enjoy this video today. And if you haven't already checked out my sponsors over on Imperial Duelist, Dragon Shield, or Gem, definitely go down in the description below. Check them all out. And if you haven't already heard, once we hit 16,000 subscribers, I'm giving away this amazing Spellground. So definitely go ahead and smash that sub button if you haven't already. Without further ado, top right on into our first topic today being Eagle Booster. Eagle Booster is a really cool card, and I know a lot of people have asked me, is this card mandatory right now? And if you're confused as to why this card would be mandatory right now, it's because Ishizu has so many different cards that can go ahead and shuffle cards back from the graveyard. That means that your Ray would not be able to come back to the board, which means that you were open for just getting OTK'd. So this is something that's actually really cool because you can at least make sure that your Shizuku stays on the board for the next turn. And I don't really think there's anything wrong with that. I just really don't like playing more reactive cards and cards that progress your game state. And Eagle Booster is one of those cards where in 6, if I'm trying to break a board, I probably just don't want to see Eagle Booster. It's a nice one to have for sure, but at the same point, I just don't really feel like it's necessary. I think it's really good in like control matchups or like the rogue matchups, but just versing against like combo, it's definitely not a card that I'd want to see. So this is something that I don't really think I'd want to play right now, but it's still a really cool option as far as something that you could play in the deck. So going into my next topic here, we're going to be talking a bit more about the Bestial cards and what if we just played a lot of Bestial cards in Striker. And I think that's actually a really cool idea because just from playing a ton of Ishizu Tear myself, I really feel like if you get double Bestialed, it just is almost a pass turn depending on how crazy your hand is. But the Bestial cards themselves just are always recurring. You can also just get the free monster on the board, so you can just normal summon and go right into like a Dark, or you can go into like one of your other plays like a Zeke. So I really do like having these a lot, especially if you have like a Druid Worm. Being able to go into a Zeke and then being able to pop a card and banish a card, it's pretty crazy. You can also play cards like the Founder, and I really like this card a lot just because of the fact that this is another one that just does apply a lot of pressure to the board. All your monsters gain a ton of attack as well, and plus these monsters in general just really do fix a problem that Strikers always had by just not having enough damage on board to be able to kill turn 2. So I do like these cards a lot, especially if you're able to like summon double Bestial and just go like normal Ray, special Rose, or what have you. They're just really nice additions to the deck, and again, just for linking off in general, I think that they're really cool as well. These cards are probably going to end up being included at some point in multiples. But I just think this is another really cool option for the deck at the moment. The other thing is just talking more so about the matchup in general and why the matchup is so bad. The Keldo and the Mudora are definitely the culprits for that. This is why I only still play one Shark Cannon. A lot of people are like, well, if you're playing against Ishizu Tear, wouldn't you want more Shark Cannon? And you really don't, because of the fact that like Cannon's only good in very specific situations, especially because like if your opponent's milling at all, then they're going to have Mudora or Keldo engraved. And using a Shark Cannon, you just kind of trade with one of those cards instead, which is like fine because you just have to target like a Keldo in the graveyard, and then you can recur it later on if you really want it. But at the same point, there's just so many issues in the matchup already, especially the fact that if you activate like Widow Anchor and they chain Keldo and they put back your spells, at resolution, your Widow Anchor won't take the monster anymore, which is really unfortunate. So there's just a lot of things that we really do have to keep in mind whenever we're playing against the matchup, especially like Rukalis being able to negate Ray coming back. You have so many different things already in the matchup that just are unfortunate. Having like the Kaleido Heart to go ahead and bounce things back, having the field spell to pop, like all of this can happen right during like your end phase. If they just go like have this effect in the hand when you Shizuku, if they just go end phase, Solyik, send a monster, and then they can pop and return a card. So there's quite a few things that they can do to just tear apart your board, and this is really why you need a lot of cards that just affect the game state for multiple turns, or things that like, affect the game state for the whole turn. And we'll talk about what that looks like as well. So moving more so into like my going second list, I do think that Bellmeister are going to be really important as far as hand traps go. I do main deck the Imperms for going second. I think this card is really strong against Kit Kit is just such a crazy card, and being able to imperm it just puts your opponent so far behind, especially if you're playing like the Ishizu Tear mirror. You just always go ahead and shuffle back Kit from your opponent's graveyard so they can't like recall those, so they're forced to summon another Kit, which is pretty crazy too. Imperm alone is just such a good card. Meister and Bell, again, just being those cards that can go ahead and shut off the graveyard as much as possible. The ability to go ahead and shut down like the Keldo and Mudora effects as well, really important too. The Area Zero is almost not needed at all now because you have linkage, and the whole point of playing Area Zero is that you can go ahead and get to another ace monster. So you can go ahead and cut that if you really want to. I am playing Prosperity at 2 because we do want to see cards like Triple Tactics. We do want to see Evenly Match. A lot of the cards that can really go ahead and just win us the game immediately. Even getting into cards like Mystic Mind can be very impactful. So even in the sideboard here, we see Zombie World. I just really don't want to have to deal with Flandries. And then also activating Zombie World against the Tearlament deck is equally very awkward, because you cannot make things like your Kitkalos, which again is really awkward. You can't make Mud Dragon either unless you're using cards from like your hand, which again is something that you don't really want to do. You don't really want to go down in card advantage, especially against Striker, because once Striker gets rolling, it's really rolling. And just another thing here too is the fact that with talents, I feel like this card is almost mandatory to this format no matter what you're playing. Being able to get a free take from your opponent is pretty crazy, especially the fact that it can still attack. So even looking at the sideboard right now, we have the Change of Heart. I do believe in Striker that you should have a 3 of in the sideboard being all 1 ofs that are just really powerful cards, because Striker is always so good going second. Adding one more very strong card on top of that in your hand amongst 5 other cards that are just very good is just always going to be the play. This is similar back to my 60 card build that I topped the regional with, because I was siding Mind Control, Duster, and Pankratops. And any single time that I saw one of those cards with my other 5 in my hand, I just felt like I automatically won, because cards like Anchor just do so much alone. Having another very strong card on top of that is just always going to be very good. So also having the Lava Golem too, this might be a little peculiar, something you haven't really seen yet, but having linkage to not really need your normal summon is really cool, because that means we have Engage, Hornet Drone, and triple linkage. And then if you're playing like the Area Zero, of course, then you also just have another way to go ahead and try to get to one of these cards. So you can Lava Golem your opponent and still play the game, which is really nice. I do have a copy of Avermax in my extra deck too. I think Avermax is just really good against the Ishizu Tear deck. It's very hard for them to out unless they have like Droplet or Borreload, which is still something that you have to get to. And then if you do get to like a Borreload, that's also fairly easy to deal with, because you have cards again like Widow Anchor. So that's something that I wouldn't really be concerned about. Having the Avermax in this matchup is pretty crazy. You can consider just cutting like the Kaina and playing an IP as well if you really want to go that route to make sure that can't be destroyed either, which is equally very good too. Talking more so about my going first list though, the first one I want to show you here is going to be the Therian package. Just 1 Regulus, 2 Field Spell. I think it's perfectly fine. Having the ability to go linkage and summon the kind and get rid of it immediately now just shows that there's a lot more ways to get to a machine, so it makes the Therian package a lot more viable now, which is really nice too, because then you can go ahead and stop the first effect that your opponent tries to activate that's going to be like a blowout to the board, whether it be like a Lightning Storm, Evenly Match, which is very important too. We are main decking triple Trap Trick and triple Different Dimension Ground. That card's really insane, and it doesn't banish his spells and traps, it just banishes monsters. So as long as you put up a very minimal board, this card's not really going to affect you at all. And then your opponent really just can't play the game either during the turn, which is very strong. And of course, we have a ton of copies of Mystic Mind, because if it's legal, we play it. That card is just absolutely insane. It's such a blowout. But we do sideboard things like Summon Limit. We want to make sure that our opponent cannot play the game. We have cards like Lightning Storm to shut down back row, Tactics in the side phone when we have to go second, because again, being able to use that card and be able to get ahead in card advantage really fast is going to be very nice. Sometimes you do need the draw. Sometimes you do just need to take a monster to go for game. So that's something that you can really consider there as far as playing that card. Even just at 2, you can put in like a Duster in the side as well if you just want to run 2 Tactics, which again is fine. Prosperity is probably just mandatory in the deck right now. I think that's very strong, especially trying to get to these cards like the Different Dimension Ground. You really just want to have that option in the deck. And then also, Prosperity is a pseudo terraforming, because most times when you Prosperity, you're going to be looking for cards like Mystic Mind when you're going second. So it's just something else that is just a really strong card for the deck, and something that I really do highly consider that you play. Going into the next option here, we're going to talk more so about the Bestial cards. In this list, I probably would swap out the Summon Limits on the side with maybe like another copy of Saronir, another Magnemite, and then another Druid Worm, and then just having a total of 7 Bestials for when you're going second against Ishizu Tear, which I think is honestly just better, because again, if you double Bestial Ishizu Tear, they're going to have a really bad time. And that's something too where I think that this deck just shines because it doesn't really need a whole lot to go off. It just needs like a Ray or a Rose, and then you're just ready to go, which is pretty nuts. Again, just being able to normal summon one of those with a Bestial on the board and just go directly into like a Zeke is always going to be very strong. So just going first with the Bestials, I think is also just very strong as well, just because of the fact that they're just such good cards right now, especially with Droplet. The interaction between Droplet and Druisworm is just ridiculous. Being able to negate something and then pop something is very, very good. I like this list a lot, and this is something that I'm very torn between this and this one, just because of the fact that you do have the option to play like the Bellmeister going first, which I think might end up being a lot better. But I do think that there is a lot of warrant to going ahead and playing the Bestial cards for if you get put going second as well. And then you also just have, instead of summon limits, the other 3 for when you are going second. So you can go ahead and just shut down your opponent as soon as possible. Because at that point too, right, you're playing Avermax. So you can go ahead and summon out like double Bestial, go Dark, bring back another card from your opponent's graveyard, and then just normal summon, make like another Link 2, and then you can go ahead and go into your Avermax, which is pretty crazy. So that's something else that I think is really important for this matchup, something to consider as far as what you want to do in your playstyle. But Avermax is really just going to be another key piece right now, and I do think that if you want to play the IP over the Kinda, except for the Regulus build that's going to be really needing the Kinda, is going to be really impactful, just because you want your Avermax to be unkillable at that point, and they're really just going to have like Droplet or Borla to be able to deal with it as well, which is fairly annoying because Avermax is a very good card. I do hope that you enjoyed today's video, because there's just so many things that you can play in Striker right now to really make sure that you're being effective in the Ishizu Tear matchup, and of course that's going to be the one that you're worried most about at the moment, but it's still a really strong deck, and Striker still has a lot of chance to play in the format. If you haven't already joined my Discord, Twitch, Twitter, or Instagram, definitely go ahead and do so. And if you want a coaching session over on Metafy, definitely go ahead and let me know in Discord. We can find a session that works for you, and I hope that everyone has a wonderful day, and I'll catch you on the next video. Thank you.